I'm Ernie Shimizi, and we're at the Shinnecock Hills Golf Club. We're in front of a building which was designed by Sanford White. This is the clubhouse, and this is the oldest golf clubhouse in the United States. Shinnecock opened in 1891 and has been the site of 4 U.S. Opens. The 5th will be played next year, June 11th through the 17th. It's a beautiful day in Southampton. I'm with Pete Kowalski of the USGA. You've got something major planned for us.
Ernie, we're really glad that the U.S. Open is coming back to Shinnecock Hills Golf Club in June of 2018. And it's an iconic U.S. Open classic test of golf, and the best players in the world will be here in June, and we are so glad to be back.
Well, the world will be here at Shinnecock. This is an exclusive club, a lot of history. The history of this club is part of the history of the USGA.
Yeah, Shinnecock is one of the 5 member clubs in the original charter of the USGA from 1894. So, and we're looking at, we're in front of a Sanford White built clubhouse, who was a classic contemporary architect, and members of Shinnecock were USGA champions as early as the late 1890s. So there's a connection to Shinnecock Hills and the USGA that goes way, way back.
This is major. Our viewers need to know that in June of next year, it'll be the 118th U.S. Open. And the U.S. Open is the premier. It's the major event of our sport, isn't it?
It's our Super Bowl. It's one of golf's majors. Every hand is on deck from the USGA staff to make sure that anyone who comes on property has the best experience they can possibly have. That starts with 156 players, and it goes to all of the people who are nice enough to buy tickets and come out and experience these players as they get the ultimate test in golf to try to win the U.S. Open trophy. And we're hoping that the events of 2018 at the 118th U.S. Open at Shinnecock are just like the ones we've had in our previous visits here.
And the good news is you welcome the public. For that, those of you who are interested in buying tickets, now's the time.
Yeah, usopen.com. All of our ticket packages are out there and ready to go, and we look forward to a great crowd and great weather when we're here in June of next year. Thank you all for taking the time to come to this beautiful place called Shinnecock Hills Golf Club to capture some images and learn some things about the golf course as we head to the 118th U.S. Open in June of next year. It is my pleasure to introduce to you, for some welcoming comments, the General Chairman from Shinnecock Hills Golf Club, Mr. Jack Curtin.
It's great to have you here, and it's you couldn't have a better day to see Shinnecock on a fall, sunny afternoon. It's not always like this, so really enjoy it while you're here. We are very excited to be hosting next year's U.S. Open, our 4th in the modern era, as well as what we expect will be another successful return engagement in 2026. I think the fact that we have worked so closely with Jeff and his colleagues, Mike, and the USGA so far in this event, it made it a lot easier for us to agree to have the Open come back in 26. And we're keeping a Bible, so what we do right and what we do wrong in the next 12 months, and it is 12 months, because I was just saying to Jeff, the tournament ends, but then we got to clean the whole place up. So there's a lot of after the tournament work that needs to be done right to keep everybody, particularly our members, happy. Jeff's going to give you a lot more detail and take you around the course after we're done here. But suffice it to say that Charlie Howe where are you, Charlie? Charlie Howe and his team moved to Southampton a year ago. They took space in the village. And he and Nick Schilling and Tim Lloyd, they're almost part of our family at this point. My wife says, I think you talk to Charlie more than you talk to anybody now, which is true. And it's been a great arrangement. I may be telling a story a little bit out of school, but a week ago today, this trophy was on the terrace of my apartment in Toronto, getting ready for a dinner for some of our closest friends who are avid golfers. And Charlie came up to play in a small outing with us in Toronto, and Mike Davis, when he said he was coming, said, well, ask Jack if he wants you to bring the trophy. And it was all great, but we did have a little bit of a fire drill getting it through customs, and it got there just in time. A little bit about where you are. Shinnecock was the golf course. The original golf course was built in 1891. It was redesigned many times. Charles Blair Macdonald had some influence, but the course that you will be touring with Jeff later was pretty much designed in 1931, 31, and there have been some extensive deforesting in the last few years. I don't know how you want to refer to that, but if you look back at pictures of what this course looked like at the 86 Open, the 95 Open, and the 04 Open, in 1986 you could not sit where you are today and see 16 of the 18 holes. You might see 3 or 4. So I mean, this is very special that we have brought the golf course back. Some on our own, and much in partnership with the USGA. To what it originally was, and we think it's pretty special. We've had, as I mentioned, 4 Opens. We will have 6. We've had the U.S. Amateur, we've had the Women's Amateur, the Senior Amateur, and the Walker Cup. But we think the U.S. Open is the tournament for Shinnecock, and fortunately, so does the USGA. I'd like to just quickly introduce a couple of key players from our side, some of whom you may have already met. Jack Juga. Jack, you want to put your hand up? Jack has been our head pro since 2007. He is, I believe, only the 4th head pro in the history of this club. Is that correct? So they tend to come and stay a long time. Jack came to us from Fairfield. He also had a long career that included Oakmont and Seminole, so very distinguished. He has been a participant in the U.S. Open. He played at Medina in 1990, and he and his wife Eileen, who is very much part of the pro staff team here, do a terrific job overseeing our golf shop operation. And well, he's been here 11 years. He and Eileen are celebrating their 25th anniversary next week, and we look forward. We look forward to your 25th anniversary with us. John Jennings, where are you, John? John is our superintendent. What you are going to tour is where he starts every day at 4:30 in the morning. He is the general of the Army that comes up here and works like dogs all the time. I have a future son-in-law who had the privilege of working for John one summer, and John had a bonus that if you showed up every day for a meeting that you have at 4:30 or whatever it is, and you get through the whole summer, you get a bonus. And my future son-in-law was here on time every day until the last day of his summer, so he got no bonus. He missed it by 15 minutes. John came to us in 2012 from Chicago Golf. He's what I call a world-class grower of grass. I'm in charge of everything in the U.S. Open that doesn't grow. It's really Brett and Jeff and Mike and John that I did have the fun when we were walking and putting in the little flags to do the contouring. But it's really John and Jeff and where's Darren that will be responsible for what this place will look like in next June, and we're very optimistic. The laugh thing is that John was the overseeing agent, I call him, in the fairway contouring project that Jeff and Mike put together with our team. And you'll get a little bit of Jeff's going to go all through that. But you can't believe what was done here under John Jennings' supervision. In a 10-day period, we moved 200,000 square feet of dirt. And it's pretty hard to tell standing from up here, so great job. Nick Conlon, where are you, Nick? Nick is in the back, is our club manager. He came to us in 2013. He runs everything that's not on the golf course, oversees basically the operations of the entire club. And the clubhouse that you are in was originally built in 1892, but it has been totally restored under Nick's supervision over the last 3 years. Virtually everything, including a basement that the fire department would have had a heart attack had they seen it when we started uncovering things. Nick restored, he oversaw the restoration of this in very dire winter circumstances in 2 out of the 3 years. So we are forever grateful to Nick for what he does for us and his staff, which is terrific. Just a couple of final comments. As I said, we have developed a terrific relationship with the USGA in this 5 or 6 years since we signed the contract for this Open. It has gotten very intense and very close this year, and I would expect between now and next June. There's been a lot said over the years about our relationship with the USGA, and on behalf of the Board of Governors and myself, I can't imagine it being in a better place than it is right now.
As Jack indicated, we are just delighted to have the opportunity to be back to Shinnecock Hills Golf Club. I think many of you know Shinnecock Hills is one of the 5 founding clubs of the USGA. So we've got a special relationship there, and we genuinely revere Shinnecock Hills as one of the most iconic U.S. Open tests we have in our country. It just tests the players from beginning to end. It's just a wonderful test of golf, and we look forward to taking you around and walking you through a few of those specific things as we spend the afternoon. In 2012, Shinnecock went through a restoration to return the golf course to the William Flynn original. They did a wonderful job, and certainly John Jennings, the superintendent, he can walk you through some of the specifics and how they went about that process. But as we reviewed the work that was done, and again, it was wonderful work that was done, the golf course ended up much wider than we probably would want for the U.S. Open. As you all know, we are trying to provide that ultimate test of golf for the best players in the world, and certainly accuracy off the tee is a key element of that. And while the restoration was true to Flynn's original vision, it wasn't quite in keeping with what we'd want for the U.S. Open. So we've tried to strike a middle ground, a proper balance between being true to the architecture and true to the test of golf that we aim to present to the best players in the world. And we believe we've come through that in a perfect way. The first hole is the Aaa Hole, where we went through that process. We tried to be mindful of not tightening for tightening's sake, especially where the membership would be playing from, but really focusing on the drive zone that is for the U.S. Open. So we're not really looking back at that 250-yard range. We're looking more 275 to 325 as a range of where we're trying to focus the work that we did. But we believe we've struck a great balance with being true to the Flynn architecture and the challenge we need for the U.S. Open. Even with this work, this tightening, this will be the widest U.S. Open we've ever played at Shinnecock. Well, I wasn't here in 1894. And incidentally, we did look it up, though. 4,400 yards in 1894. It's going to be 7,400 yards on the scorecard for next June. So that was another component of the restoration. There were 10 new tees added, and you'll see that they were very thoughtful in the addition. It wasn't just yardage for yardage sake. It was appropriately added on holes where it will make a difference. Maybe restore a drive, a carry to a more challenging aspect for the modern U.S. Open, that type of thing. So you'll see that as we go around. We've got a couple of stops that we'll talk about that. Don, anything you want to share from a restoration standpoint and that process and how it worked? This might be as good a spot as any to start on that.
Sure. I think that I think that the best part of the changes that were made for the U.S. Open are the mindfulness of the Flynn architecture and the angles. If you look at where fairways were narrowed after our post-restoration of 2012, 2013, none of the bunkers are covered, and it really accentuates the true Flynn angles off the tees. Look at the tee positioning as you go around with the 10 new tees that were installed for the Open to add yardage. They really bring these features back into play. So the characteristics of the original design of the golf course are accentuated actually by the changes that were set up for the Open. We've expanded green areas, utilizing documents that we have in the clubhouse, pictures, drawings, bringing the green surfaces back out to where they were, bringing bunkers back into place surrounding greens, and really offering a lot of different advantages for the ball to react when it comes into the green and how it putts across, and also how it will travel off if mishit. So there's a number of little subtle changes that were brought together to help restore the golf course back to its original intent. And I think from what I've seen of the fairway restoration work that we've done recently, it even makes it better, and it'll be a brilliant experience for all those that participate next year.
I'm with Darren Bavard, who is the Director of Championship Agronomy?
Agronomy.
Wow, agronomy. That's a title that is pretty unique.
Yeah, it's to break it down to simple, it's the study of plants and soil. So.
And what a better place than a world-class golf course. You travel the world, you know, with the USGA, of course. You guys are the preeminent organization. Science has become an important part of USGA.
Yeah, absolutely. And in a lot of respects, as it relates to the green section, it always has been with our environmental research program that's been in place since 1981. So it's always been an important part of turf grass management in general, but I think in recent years it's become a greater part of our championships as well.
And it's maintaining the ground so that they can provide optimal play, but it's also the environment and the ecology and how to do that in a way that is friendly. You know, we're standing over an aquifer here on the East End.
Yeah, and again, it's a matter of, sustainability is the word that everybody puts out there in terms of the environment, and by managing water, trying to use, maintaining firm, fast conditions, using less water, trying to use less fertilizer inputs and those types of things as well. And we've done a lot of research on those very topics. Like water management right now is probably one thing that we're really working on the most with the Green Section Research Program.
So one quick last question. Shinnecock, in comparison to all the other courses in the United States that you're responsible for whenever there's a USGA event, how does it measure up? I mean, we're sandy soil here. It's a different type of environment.
Well, it's interesting when you look at Shinnecock. Another great example is Oakmont, where they've tried to restore the old architecture and they've done a lot of tree removal in that process. You have these vast open sites to begin with, and if you have good sunlight and good air movement, you have to do a lot less to the grass to keep it healthy and happy. So the fact that this is such an open site, no pun intended, but wide open site, is that a lot of good growing environments out here, good air movement, and John Jennings, the superintendent, is certainly well aware of his responsibility as well. But when you look, you have these large acreages of the unmowed fescues that really have minimal inputs compared to the rest of the property. So all of those things contribute, again, to trying to be as sustainable as possible.
Well, we're looking forward to a great event. As usual, you guys always make a good show of it here when you come to Southampton.
We're going to do our best, and it's good to talk to you.
20 yards longer from the tee that we used in 2004. Perhaps what's most important is the angle. By moving the tee back and golfer's left, you've created a much different angle for this tee shot. And again, factoring in the wind, all that goes on, there's a bit of a, if you will, cape-like effect. Where I'm standing, that green cart that's in the middle of the fairway is about 275 yards. That would not be an unusual carry number for players that participate in the U.S. Open. but the rough has been moved in off the left and slightly off the right. So if you want to take it on that type of a line and then mid-swing have a slight change of heart and now let it drift a little further right, that rough on the right will come up more quickly, and all of a sudden you've pushed the ball and it just slips into the rough. If you judge the wind improperly and say, hey, the wind's going to move the ball a little further right, and you start it down that rough line and the wind doesn't touch it as much, and you can't carry it all the way out to the fairway at 310 yards on that line. This is all about angles, and when you introduce angles to the best players in the world, they don't miss the club face that often. Their ability to strike the golf ball in the middle of the club face is not generally a problem. When they're a little bit off, it's the dispersion that's a little bit off. And we certainly saw that at Erin Hills this year with some of the best players in the world, and their drivers, all of a sudden, they're 40 yards offline because of the speed they generate. So this angle really changes things. Instead of a straight-ish tee shot, this angle makes all the difference in the world and really was part of what Flynn was after with getting the angles, and John talked about it a little bit earlier. It's not just about hitting fairways at Shinnecock. You need to be in the right part of the fairway to have the best opportunity to take on a given hole location and be successful. So really a great opportunity here to add some length that's meaningful, but by shifting the tee further golfers left, you've added an additional element of difficulty that has to be contemplated by the player with the angle of approach. I suspect we would, Alex, unless we had some unusual north wind. Then we would, we might have to move forward. But again, hard to believe, but we certainly could use the other tee if required.
Jeff, the number of tees that were added, what is that?
10 new tees factor into the new scorecard yardage of 7,400 yards and change. I think it's 7,440, I think, is what we provided this afternoon.
Hey, Jeff, when you're speaking about the wind, does it factor into your green speeds?
Absolutely. The wind, and certainly now with the exposed nature of all the holes, the wind will factor into every decision we make about every element of the golf course and its setup, including green speeds and the firmness of the greens. If we know we're going to have 4 days where it's going to blow like this, we would likely have to make some adjustments in our water management versus if we knew it was going to be 4 days and relatively still. Absolutely. With the setup that we try to provide and the stage that we try to provide the players, you want to differentiate well-played strokes from those that are not well-played. If well-played strokes and those that are not well-played end up in the same place, then we're not doing our job properly. You can see where the original rough line was to the left as well as to the right. And we squeezed it in, again, appropriately. Still allowing, not covering the bunkers, still allowing, and the bunker that's back here, though, it's probably not too much in play with a prevailing breeze, the bunker that we drove past. But still allowing the players to play a tee shot here with their driver, or the club of their choosing. They could certainly use the slope to get some additional run, but the additional 20 yards and shifting that angle over makes for a more difficult tee shot than kind of a straight on type shot. About the types of grass, what we've used, where they come from, let's give them a little bit of that right now.
Absolutely. To paint you a picture of the work that we did, if you wind it back to where the fairway was, so push it out, so don't imagine all this grass isn't here. We came in, we rolled up the fairway sod, and then hauled that out. The rough that was on the side was cut and transitioned in. So now the void behind that rough is open. So we transplanted what you see, a couple different grasses here. The brown strip that you see going down the edge here was transplanted either from one of the tent areas that were designated on the golf course or the par 3 course across the street. Any area, another section over here on the right side, players right, this is mowed rough that was transplanted from the par 3 course. And then there are some instances like on the right and left side of number 1, which we didn't look at, but behind number 3 green here, we bought purchased fescue, fine fescue that was put in. So it came in from a number of different spots, and we tried to match it up for how Mike Davis and Jeff Hall wanted the area to play, and also to get it to look as authentic as possible from where it was moved in. So it was just a simple, wasn't simple, but as far as the process goes, it was a matter of cutting, lifting, transplanting, and then repositioning.
When did you do all that?
We started on September 17th and finished on September 25th. So we had a crew, and one thing that we're not talking about, because it really doesn't impact play, we have a triple row irrigation system that runs across the fairway. So by moving the fairway in, it changes the geometry of our sprinkler heads. So we didn't want to have a sprinkler head out in the native rough area. That sprinkler head was picked up, moved in, which changed the spacing on the other two. So 270 sprinkler heads were moved to accommodate the new fairway area. We had a staff, including ours, of 75 people each day, working 15-hour days over that eight-day span to make this happen that quickly.
What impact does the winter have on the course? Is it hard to maintain until next June?
You know, the weather's always one of the big variables, especially in our area. A lot of times we just end up with rain out here. Some instances, like in 2015, where you have snow with rain, it creates more of a challenging scenario. What we've done to prepare ourselves, and it's like any situation, you hope for the best and prepare for the worst. We cover our greens now. We've added drainage. We've instituted different aerification processes in order to minimize any impact on the weather. Now, as far as the new sod goes, again, that's a big part of the reason why we wanted to get it established early. We're fortunate out here in this part of Long Island to be moderated by the ocean temperature, which stays warm, and we could have a day in November like this. So typically we don't have a hard freeze in the ground until the end of December, January, so we've got plenty of time for the sod to grow in and really become part of the playing surface.
John, as you did this project of narrowing the fairways, how much of it is actual science and how much is actually doing what the USGA asked to get the golf course ready for the US Open?
It's a combination of the two. The vision is the USGA asking to have something done, and then the rest of it's science. It's agronomy. It's getting soil preparation. It's making sure that the right grasses are installed, that they're installed the proper way. And you'll see a number of our staff members as we go around watering. We haven't had much rain out in the east end of Long Island, especially since we put the sod in. We have 7 acres of new sod out here in this project, and we've received a 1/4 inch of rain since September 17th, which we weren't counting on, but we're putting a lot of people on hoses to make sure that it thrives.
I know this might be an obvious question, but where's the par 3 course?
The par 3 course, as you go down the hill toward the light, it's on the left-hand side. And it's a fun little course. It's going to be a tent village in the entrance and the bus drop-off during the Open. So we recognize this is an area that was going to have quite a bit of disruption. And fortunately, it had some great grass that we could use on the golf course that matched up out here.
The green, which is what you just put in, and then that browner part, and then there's green, and then there's the higher fescue. So what is that going to look like during the US Open?
It'll be green along the edge. It'll be brown and continue to be brown going further out. The reason you have the fescue behind it that's kind of green still, that's where the irrigation line was. So it received overspray on that. So it's received water, fertilizer, overspray, and that will become more of a homogeneous, more homogeneous aesthetically as we proceed through the winter and the spring.
And what's your planned heights?
That is something I'd say we're still developing, Alex. We realize with this introduction of the fescue and moving things around that we've got to get this in place, get it established, and then we'll figure out how we're going to manage that. But much as we do at every U.S. Open, the opportunity for there to be an intermediate rough, some of this fescue will be cut to some height. I'll just use a number of 4 inches. I'm not sure that's going to be the height, but 4 inches where it will not be at that what we would call seed head height, and then the balance will get get up to a seed head height. But keep in mind, too, this will look very different in June. It won't have this, unfortunately, brown to it, because if we're going to be in June, it'll still be coming out of the spring and likely to be much more green top to bottom.
May I speak to the grasses first?
Please.
With the grasses that you see, and Jeff brought up an interesting point, the brown that you see out here, a lot of the brown that you see is blue stem. It's little blue stem. And that is a grass, it's a warm season grass. It starts to show up at the end of July, August. And this time of year, it's very pronounced throughout the golf course. In the early part of the spring, the look is fescue. And you don't have the blue stem, so it's a finer leaf. It tends to sway with the wind more. And as Jeff said, it is going to have more of a green appearance just because of the time of year.
Just see a little green pad at the base of that chimney. Par 4, 490 yards. There's kind of a split fairway. For the U.S. Open, I can't imagine anybody going and using the left fairway unless we got a crazy, crazy wind day that they felt like they didn't want to take on this natural sandy area. It's probably a 250-yard carry. John, does that sound about right? Yep. 250, 260 to play from the tee over that sandy area on a line to where we are all standing right now. It's a blind tee shot. They will not see the golf ball land here, and they'll have to pick out that line a little bit during the practice rounds. John has removed, well, maybe it's not fair to just say John, but a number of obvious alignment tools have been removed here on the left side. They might have to pick something else out on the horizon to come up with their line. But this was another example of the Flynn architecture and the strategy. And looking back at the notes from 2004, we tightened the fairway here to some 28 or so yards off of the right side. And yet the right side is the preferred side to get the best angle into this putting green. The further left you go, you're being required to play over the bunker. It's a more difficult shot, but the player had some risk here by taking it up the right side, working with that natural sandy area if they let it drift too far to the right, but there was a benefit if they executed. So we've really retained quite a bit of the width here. We didn't touch the right side at all. You might even see players hit something other than driver to fit it into that little bit of lobe of fairway in that direction to obtain the best angle to that, especially a back left hole location. We did bring in, you can see this natural sandy area here, this feature here on the left side. We did add some rough in off of that and around the corner just to narrow it up. But obviously there's tremendous width back here, but that's probably only 280 yards off the tee. And it's not really practical width that they can play into because of the way that the natural sandy area bisects this fairway. But when we get into here, this is really probably the drive zone of well, they're not going to carry it this far. Probably back another 30 yards, and they can run the ball up into this area. Again, we're feeling the prevailing breeze, which will be against them here. But just an example where, could we tighten this up to 30 yards? Absolutely. But it would mitigate the architecture and the strategy that Flynn had designed. And so we did not bother to work off the right side at all. We just left it as is, and we give them a little bit more width to play into. But while this may be a safer play further to the left, it makes the resulting second shot that much more demanding by playing over the bunker and with the wind coming more from left to right. The further right they are, they're playing up the green and more into the prevailing breeze. Here at the seventh hole, the Redan hole at Shinnecock, just one of the iconic holes here at Shinnecock Hills. Redan feature higher in the front right, lower in the back left. When a hole is cut to the center, to the left, you don't have to play straight toward it. You can use the slope, the pitch of the ground, to feed the ball this direction. The only real change, well, John, this is a green and the green surround that's slightly larger from. So this is an example where the green has been restored to its original size and shape. A miss right of this hole or long results in a very, very, very difficult up and in. A miss long and left down into where we've kind of parked our carts, it's challenging, but it's doable. These bunkers, I think old Tom Morris once said, bunkers are not places of pleasure. And that would qualify these bunkers here, short and left of the 7th green. The real change with respect to the project that we've just gone through is we've added some rough height fescue as a buffer between the putting green and as opposed to just having closely mown turf run down into the bunker. What we are trying to prevent is somebody playing a recovery shot. They've played a reasonable shot. The ball is just trickling. It doesn't need to go all the way down into the bunker. It's really not separating really good shots from pretty good shots. It just doesn't work. So we've added that little bit of strip of fescue grass there that we can manage with height of cut. Not suggesting it'll be that tall. It could be a little lower. But the whole thought process being a ball that's just trickling needn't get all the way down into the bunker. A shot that comes in from the tee that lands there and bounces in there is going to get down into the bunker, and that's the right result for that type of shot. But again, this was certainly a very visible part of the challenges that we had in 2004. And I think a lot of the challenges that we had was really related to water management and just data that we didn't have at our fingertips with respect to managing. Darren Brevard, who is our Director of Championship Agronomy, so oversees the agronomic program for all of our championships, but certainly specializes or focuses on the Open Championships, the U.S. Amateur, Women's Amateur, our Cup matches. These are two of these, is that fair to say, two of these three tools are new from 2000 to 2004 that we did not have at our disposal. The Stimpmeter goes back quite a bit longer than that. So, Darren, I'm going to turn this over to you.
Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, we'll start with the Stimpmeter. We certainly had this back in 2004 to measure putting green speed. I'm sure it was a challenge to do so on this green, and will probably remain a challenge. But the one innovation that we have of the Stimpmeter is fairly simple. Is
Explain how it works at its full length, Dave.
Well, it's basically you roll 3 balls in one direction, theoretically on a level surface, and the average of that roll, and then you roll 3 balls back in the other direction and take the average of that roll, and the number that you get, whether it's 12 feet, 11 feet, that's the Stimpmeter reading. It's really a ball roll distance. Speed is in miles per hour. This is just it rolled 12 feet. But that's what's become the moniker of green speed. The one innovation, though, is we now have a 2x notch that our research science innovation team developed for us. So when you have a green that maybe doesn't have a 12 or 13 foot flat spot to be able to measure green speed, this is exactly proportional. You do the same roll except with the 2x notch, and then you double the number that you get. So if it rolls 6 feet off of this, the greens are rolling 12. So that's helpful on greens on these old classic courses that have a lot of movement in them. Probably the most important innovation, and it was a direct result of 2004 and the situation here, is the USGA True Firm. And essentially it has a projectile in the bottom of it. Just happens to be 1.68 inches in diameter to mimic a golf ball. And don't drop my...
I didn't drop it yet.
You know, it's very simple. You just pick it up, you drop it, it gives us a reading.
When I screw up.
It's just got to make it so it fits. There you go.
See, there's a reason I don't operate this.
But so it's just pick it up, drop it. We get a number. The number that we get is depth of penetration in inches. The lower the number, the firmer the green, obviously. So now we're able to take data. If you guys generally arrive on the Monday of the practice rounds or that Sunday, I'm here a week in advance of that with the rest of the green section team, working with John and his team, and we're collecting data every day. Firmness, speed, and we've also got the moisture meter, which generally I'll leave that to John's team because while moisture correlates to firmness, from a playability perspective, I'm worried about firmness and not moisture. Moisture is about turf health, and to make sure that when we leave at the end of the week that we haven't, you know, pushed the greens too far. So John and his team have a better idea of what the number, moisture percentage that this gives us. And again, we correlate that to firmness just talking to John and his team. But I think the true firm, rather than us having to, you know, go on feel or, you know, boy, we watched a lot of shots and that's how the ball reacted. I think we'll be good today. Well, we watch shots, judge ball reaction, and correlate it to a number now on the true firm. And so that should and has to date prevented to have a reoccurrence where playability becomes, you know, as Jeff said, when a well-struck shot and a poorly struck shot both wind up in the same spot, we haven't done our job. But again, there's a lot of science, a lot of data. We collect data during advanced week and practice rounds 3 times a day, morning, noon, and evening. And by the time we get to the championship rounds, we have a pretty good idea of where the numbers need to be for speed, for firmness, as it relates to playability. So we'll make sure that we get it right.
Hold on to that, because you're going to keep going here. I'm going to throw a topic at you. We get together every afternoon at 2:30 to meet with the superintendent, key representatives from the club, Darren and his team, Mike Davis, myself, to talk about what have we seen today, what does today's data look like, how does that impact tonight's preparation of the golf course with the maintenance that's going to go on. Darren, take us through the information that you're always, Jake Swick is their lead meteorologist, and he and Darren spend a lot of time together at a championship. Take him through the information that we are now gathering from that standpoint that helps impact some of these other decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first, obviously, the big one is whether it's going to rain or not. And if it's going to rain, that takes a lot of the control and guesswork out of our hands in terms of firmness. But when we do have stretches of dry weather, we look at ET rates, you know, dew points, those type of things. How quickly are the greens going to dry out over the course of the day? So that way, you know, one of the things that's difficult is you'll hear that, you know, they'll say, boy, they really softened the golf course up this morning. Well, folks, the greens are always going to be softer without rain for the morning rounds generally than they will the afternoon, because we've got to get them through the entire day, not just through the morning. So if we were to start at that peak firmness in the morning, by the afternoon, we would have problems potentially. So we talk to Jake and get, you know, wind speed information as well, because that impacts green speed. You know, if have a calm morning and Jake says, you know, hey, but tomorrow afternoon, you know, the wind could get up to 20 or 25 miles an hour, we know that we have to be careful with green speed. And that affects, you know, our conversations about, you know, how many times we're going to cut the greens, how many times we're going to roll, how much water we're going to apply, independent of the information that we, you know, get from that. So it's a matter of, it's correlating all of these different factors together. And, you know, look, the weather is what the weather is. Forecasts are, you know, they're right to some degree, and sometimes they miss them, but we try to leave as little to chance as possible. And I would also say I think that we always try to err on the side of, if we're, going to have a curveball thrown at us, when it happens, it's not going to cause us a problem in a negative way, that we've made the proper preparations.
Standing up here on the 12th tee for the championship. We'll play straight out that direction, but really this gives us a great view of the short 11th. Teeing ground off to our right. Very tiny putting green here on the left. Plays about 159 yards. There's another tee at 120 yards we might consider using with the right hole location, but it's a very, very small target. When you are down on the tee, you have this infinity look where there's just nothing but blue sky behind this green, and we've made sure to keep the construction off to the side so that we can retain that look for the championship. But again, just another green that will have our complete and undivided attention throughout the week. There's quite a bit of, we can walk down the green after we get kind of done right here, but quite a bit of pitch. You can see a ball that finishes over and left. Very, very difficult recovery, and two bunkers, well, three bunkers, but four bunkers, I should say. But the two primary bunkers, short and right, are very, very challenging to play from. So it'll be a fairly short club, and I think, again, one of the real great examples of the variety of types of golf shots that a player is being asked to play at Shinnecock Hills. I mean, 159 yards, still conditions, that's probably a 9-iron, maybe a pitching wedge for some of these players, but a very demanding shot to a very small green.
Does what happened at LACC and they playing that short hole under 100 yards, is that?
So it's really returned that corner bunker. It's about a 275 carry on this corner bunker here on the right. 275 carry. The bunker, first bunker on the left, I think is in the 330 range. At 329 to the far end of it. And we've introduced some rough behind this bunker on the inside corner here so that the players have to take it over that bunker, are going to have to carry it quite a bit further than they would have previously, and they're likely not going to be able to hit it to the right of that bunker and just bounce it down through the rough to keep it in the fairway. So it does shift the focus of the tee shot a little bit further left so that first left-hand bunker is going to at least be in their thought process. A really good example with this, although it's 518 yards, it is a downhill tee shot, which shortens the hole a little bit. However, it also exposes that tee shot to the wind a whole lot longer as well. So this is a really solid driving hole here at Shinnecock. And when you think about, we just saw the 11th hole at 159 yards, very short club, and now we come back here and stretch. What was always one of the longer holes at Shinnecock is back to being long again at 519 yards. I think it's a really a very, very solid par 4 here in the middle of the back nine.
Is this the longest hole?
This is the longest par 4 on the golf course, yes.
So there's a par 5? Or?
Yeah, the 16th hole is 6, I have to look at my notes, 606, 650. Yeah, 616, yeah, as a par 5. But this will be the longest par 4 on the golf course. But just a wonderful setting, and I think most of the folks would sign for 4 strokes every day on this one and be relatively happy. So we're here at the final hole. I think we're relatively close. Now, Mark, you probably know just where the blade of grass is. About where Corey played from, although I can see the flag. I don't know that he couldn't. He had to So he was probably maybe a little bit more this direction. Well, yeah, that's true. I'm not taller than a lot of folks, but I am a little taller than Corey. But just, one of the iconic finishing holes in golf. And I think the new tee, which is back on that line, really kind of the cart path that you see in the distance, that's kind of the line. It's a little bit lower than the primary tee that you see there. This new tee has really restored this to that kind of iconic finishing hole in the 485, 490 range. The bunker that you see here on my left is about a 300-yard cover, slightly uphill from the tee. And you can see where we brought the fairway over, or this direction, added more of that rough in the left side. And again, the whole thought process was trying to be mindful of the topography here. Yes, we could have brought this into 32 yards, but would that have been enough room for a player to fit a tee shot in, given that the slope of the ground is from left to right? It was about 52 to 54 yards when the restoration took place. We brought it in, and it's I think the resulting width is somewhere right around 42 yards for the U.S. Open. So I think that's really a very good example. And as I said, 2004, this was about 30 yards wide. So I think it's a very good example of trying to make sure we're testing the best players in the world while remaining true to the architecture and the strategy that William Flynn built into the golf course. But this is certainly a wonderful hole to conclude a U.S. Open on. The green is very challenging as well. There's a bit of a green expansion here that will come into play. The back right bunker is now not covered up by rough, where a ball could actually chase into that bunker. So just a very thoughtful, really commend the club for the thoughtful approach in the restoration. And again, I think it's going to be somebody needs to make 4 here to win the U.S. Open. I think they will earn the title by making 4 here. It's a very solid finishing hole.
Thank you, Jeffrey. This is Jeffrey Hall, and I'm going to read your title: Managing Director, Rules and Open Championships. Thanks for this unbelievable tour.
Oh, you bet. Happy to do it, and really appreciate your support in coming out and hearing more about the U.S. Open that's upcoming.
I could tell that you really love this Shinnecock course.
Absolutely. It's what's not to love. It's just a wonderful, wonderful test of golf, and we're so delighted to be able to come back with the U.S. Open.
Well, this course has been around since, I believe, 1892. So the love of golf, it's when it started. Now, obviously wasn't a full 18 holes when it started. But I think they built that clubhouse to the near us here, which was built 2 years later by Sanford White. But it's amazing how it's maintained and evolved over the years.
Well, it's really stood the test of time, hasn't it? The members love it. You see a lot of legacy members with parents to children and all. And, we've had a number of different championships here. U.S. Open being the most visible, the biggest, but a women's amateur, the Walker Cup here, a senior amateur. It's just a wonderful test of golf.
All right, so I'm going to ask you a question, Jeffrey. When this is going to be in full swing in June of 2018, where will you be? What will you be doing? What sort of calls will come to the managing director of Rules and Open Championships?
Well, for our Open Championships, we kind of try to divide responsibilities from inside the ropes and outside the ropes. And I oversee what happens inside the ropes. I've got a great team. It's not a one-man job by any stretch, but I'm responsible for what's going on inside the ropes. So whether it's golf course preparation, conditioning, certainly work very closely with Mike Davis on those 2 points and the setup of the golf course, working with Mike. But then it's the conduct of the championship. What's going on with the weather? We have thunder and lightning. Do we have to suspend play? Rules. Getting our rules committee together, conducting the rules meeting, getting our rules experts to convey the specifics of what we're doing that week to our rules committee, managing anything that comes up from a play standpoint. Maybe there's been an awkward ruling, a player wants to have a further conversation about it, all those kind of things. So once we get into actually playing the game inside the ropes, that's kind of where my focus is going to be.
Well, it's an awesome responsibility, but you're a great guy, so I know you're going to be able to carry it forward. It transforms itself into a mini city. That's what we were talking about with all of our visitors that will be here and all of our spectators. Becomes a major event worldwide, and thank you to the USGA for keeping the standards as high as ever.
Well, you're kind to say that. Obviously, we don't go anywhere that we're not invited to go, and Shinnecock has very graciously extended the invitation for us to be here in 2018, and we're just excited to come back and do this again.
For our East End viewers, we're an East End TV station. We love when you're here. We love when you're at the National, at Sabonic. You know, stay with us. Keep coming to the East End and bringing this great level of golf, and we thank you for all that you guys do. What a fabulous tour we just had. This is Jonathan Jennings, who's the course superintendent here at Shinnecock, and job well done to you and your staff.
Thank you. Everybody worked hard to get the golf course where it is today, and we'll continue that work effort all the way up until the Open.
So, Jonathan, this is a 12-month everyday activity, isn't it?
It is. I mean, if you think about it, the job changes, and that's what makes it interesting between the weather and what we're doing on the golf course. We go from a maintenance season in the summertime in the fall to a construction season in the winter, and now with Open preparation, that's been a big focus for our staff as well.
You know, what was really interesting, I mean, this is a course that's been here since 1892?
Correct.
Wow. You think of what grasses were like in those days and the attention and all the rest, but now it's evolved into a real science.
It really has, and the science part of it has allowed the game to advance to the point where it is now. If you think about green speed and what we're able to do with the grass and maintain it throughout a championship, such as the U.S. Open, but even on daily playing conditions, golf courses are providing almost U.S. Open conditions on a daily basis for their membership and regular golfers.
Well, the U.S. Open is an international event, but what draws us both together is we're both locals.
Right.
And we love the eastern end of Long Island, home of some of the greatest golf courses in the world, and preeminent among all of them is this Shinnecock course, and that's because of people like yourself who've chosen to live and work here on the East End and give it your best.
It's a lot of fun being out here. Aside from work, our family really enjoys the area. We've lived out here for 6 years now, and it's a lot of fun. We enjoy it year-round, walk on the beaches in the wintertime, and it's just a tremendous area. I've heard people refer to this section of for golf as the cradle of American golf, and if you think about Sabonic, National, Shinnecock, and Southampton Golf Club, it's fabulous to have 4 amazing golf courses connected like that.
Just a little aside for our viewers, everyone wants to golf here at Shinnecock, and we've known of occasions where ex-presidents or whatever just show up for the day. No one even knows about it. And it's really amazing. I think one of these days the Pope is going to come and just schedule in a visit here to Shinnecock just to enjoy it.
Well, we don't permit unaccompanied guests, so every person that does come out with any level of fame is playing with one of our members. And if the Pope knows somebody, he'll be able to get out.
Well, that's the key. That's the key. All the best. Looking forward to June in 2018, U.S. Open. It's going to be a great show.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed speaking with you today.
If you're interested in attending the U.S. Open taking place here at the Shinnecock Hills Golf Club, all you have to do is go to usga.org/tickets. For WVVH-TV, I'm Ernie Shimizi.